Welcome back to Her Story. We are talking about your money today. Are y'all ready? We need to get into it about what's going on with our money. Yes, this is an issue even for myself. Come on, y'all. So, Dakota's here with us. And then our girl, Yameci. Yameci works at the church. Yameci, tell us what you do at the church.
So, I am the director of finance at Concord, and I've been with Concord now going on almost 4 years this year.
Come on, Yameci.
4 years.
Okay, so Yameci tells us in her very sweet way that you're not on budget.
Yes, I manage the finances of church and call everybody out when you are over, but praise everybody when you're under.
Listen, the women's ministry, we're doing really good, right?
You're doing great.
Praise
you're
the Lord.
You're doing great. And all the initiatives you guys did this year staying within budget.
Recognize. All right. So, Dakota, I'm going to let you hit us off with the first question.
Yes, the millennials have questions. So, when we think about finances, there is just so many levels to it. And honestly, it's not something that's talked about a lot in the Black household. So, this is a broad question, but why do you feel like finances are so complicated or just hard for people to understand?
I think that really you have to take it upon yourself to learn about finances. It's only you who can help yourself. No one else is going to help you. And there's so many resources out there to help you. I love like Dave Ramsey's courses that you can do for free to learn about budgeting and debt management and things like that. But there are tons of resources that you can use to learn about debt management, about your finances. And I think that you're right. In households, people aren't talking about money. What did your mom say when you grew up? We don't have no money. So, it's always like, and you don't really realize that till you're on your own, paying your own bills. And then you really realize, okay, yes, I need to stick to a budget. I need to manage my money properly. And then, I think, too, the stigma of talking about money is kind of gone. Like, I feel like if you have a close network of friends, you can get together to talk about finances and, get advice from each other. And I think that's really great.
Yeah. No, that's needed. That's really helpful. I think, especially in an age now where the 20s, everybody in our age group is just talking about student loans, right? So you often feel like you go to school, you put all this work in, you come out and you're starting like in the hole. And so a lot of people in our age group, and DJ and I talk about this a lot, it's like, okay, if you're already starting in this place where you feel like you're in a bit of a financial deficit, how do you get ahead? Yep. What do you do?
Absolutely. And, I'm 20 years older than you, but I came out of school with student debt too. And let me tell you, it took me a long time to get out of student debt, but you can do it. But the key is, there's a lot of scholarship programs that you can apply for. And you really have to think about, I hear a lot of stories about people who are inundated with debt. And there's just some amounts of debt that are just so deep that you're like, how am I ever going to pay for this? And you're going to be like, I'm going to be dead on, before I pay all of this off. But you can really tackle that debt. And it's so important because student debt is never forgivable. You're always going to need to pay your student debt. So the best thing to do is tackle it as quickly as possible. It's going to take you time. You have to realize that. But also when you're in college, be cognizant of what are the things that you really need. Do you really need to live on campus? Is it going to cost you an extra $30,000 to live on campus? Like I didn't live on campus. I still had student debt when I came out. Even now, it's different. College is way more expensive now than when it was before. People are coming out easily with, depending on what your field is. I mean, I talked to a girl one day, and she was in her master's program to get a doctor's degree. And she was like, I had no idea how much debt they come out with. And she was like, I'm coming out with $500,000 of debt. And I was like, wow. I can't even imagine how you would ever pay that back. So it is very daunting. So you really have to think about, the type of career that you're going to go into, whether or not the money that you're gonna make is gonna be able to pay off that debt. I think a lot of times that people choose a degree in a specific area, they don't end up doing that. So also think about that. I think the problem is too, when you go into college, you're very young and you don't really understand finances like that and coming out, like you have no concept of coming out with $60,000 worth of debt. And I think that there needs to be more education on that, of really understanding what kind of debt you are picking up. Not only that, but parents are taking on that debt as well for students. So it's really, you have to look at it very closely and understand what you're getting yourself into. But it can be paid off. I mean, $500,000, that's another story. But, you know, when you're picking a career that will pay that off, you can do it. And I know that, you know, in politics now, there's a lot of loan forgiveness. That I'm not sure how it works, but if you're fortunate enough to be part of that program, but there are tons of scholarships, tons of programs that you can apply for to get support with financial aid and paying for college.
Yeah, definitely.
I would suggest, you know, when you come out of college, and of course with that debt, I would look at just a couple of other things. I think one thing that saved me and saved myself and Pastor Carter, we lived with my parents for a year, and we used that year to pay off credit card debt. Couldn't pay off our student loan debt, but just to live rent-free in my parents' house for a year to pay down on debt was the best decision ever. And I remember that first month, we were living our best lives. We were like, all right, no rent, no nothing. And, but then we kind of got into reality, like, okay, we're trying to save for this house. We're trying to really get ourselves in a better financial position. And I remember we did an envelope system now at that time. And we kind of tracked our spending. So like we looked at what we were doing, like entertainment wise and so on. And I think when you kind of track that and then set some financial goals, and I think that would be the biggest thing I would tell anybody is to set some financial goals. Like if your goal is, I mean, like you said, $500,000 in debt, or 30 or 40, however much in your student loans, you got to set some financial goals. Like maybe I'm not going to use my credit card. Maybe, you know what, like the one credit card that we use, well, I don't want to say all that, but anyway, it's a credit card that we have to pay off at the end of the month. So it makes us really think like, okay, if I use this credit, I have to pay this off at the end of the month. So just little things like that. And then just I think your crew can hold you accountable too, and stuff. Like if your crew, because I'm so thankful. Yameci, aren't you thankful we didn't have like social media where we could see what people were doing and so on? Because you're not tempted to try and keep up with everybody or compare yourself to everybody, because I don't have it. But I think when you have a financial goal and you say, you know what, I my birthday's coming up, but you know what? Everybody, you can come meet me at the restaurant. Your drinks, your drinks. Your dinner, your dinner. But yeah, that's just one idea I think of when I think about y'all in just with financial debt. And I think it never goes away.
Yeah.
No matter, some people feel like, oh, when I start making this much money, I don't have to worry about it. But if you're bad, if you can't handle $10,000, you definitely can't handle $100,000, because if you're spending that $10,000 just like that, that $100,000 is going to even go even quicker. Exactly. So you have to get some practical principles in place just to make sure you're being financially sound.
And throughout your life, you're always going to have things that you have to pay for when you come out of college, when you have children, when you want to buy a home, saving for retirement. It's always going to be something. So you just have to budget wisely. I mean, having a budget is number one. Knowing where your expenses go. I think a lot of people just swipe their cards all the time, and they're not keeping track. Yeah. And then it's funny because my mom always used to say, you know, my mom's old-fashioned. She uses her checkbook to balance. And she would be like, do you budget your checkbook? And I was like, no, Ma. When it's zero, it's balanced. So, but having a budget is pivotal. I mean, just listing your expenses, what you make per month, and what you really have left over to then put towards your debt, put towards savings, put towards investing. But if you don't have a budget and you don't know where your money's going to and where you're spending your money, that's where you need to start first.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful. I wish I knew some of these things going into college, especially because you're in that age going into college where all the credit card companies are like, here, you're pre-approved. And so you're like, okay, I'll take it. And you just get swipe happy.
Yeah.
And then you look at it 4 years later and you're like, did I do that? Did I need that? And so now just at a point where it's a lot of reflection on some of those spending habits. But I think it's definitely helpful for a lot of all ages, but especially millennials and the younger generations to start understanding the importance of some of those decisions now and just the impact that it will have, because I think that was the biggest thing, to your point, just not knowing going into it, what exactly am I signing up for?
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. I remember when I was in college, and every single event, there would be a table out there where you can get a credit card. And of course, you're young, you have no idea. And you're like, oh yeah, it's just like a free for all, but it's really not. Because at the end of the day, you still have to pay it back. And when you're in college, you're not working, or you might be working. How are you going to pay it all back? Yeah. So I think it's also, that starts at home with your parents teaching you about credit cards, financial responsibility. At the end of the day, you spent the money, so you have to pay it back.
Oh, you definitely have to pay it back. And Elsie, I'm just curious, what are some financial lessons that you've passed on to your kids just to help them avoid some of the mistakes maybe you and PC made?
Well, you know what? I think one of the biggest ones was when they were selecting a college, a college that we could afford. And Kennedy last year, her two top choices was a school that was like over $100,000. And we just kept looking at her like, God bless you. And we were just like, we can't afford that. And I remember her saying, well, can y'all just get me a loan? I mean, if I get accepted to this prestigious school, and it was a beautiful school, great school. I could totally see her there, but I can't afford it. Yeah. And I said, Kennedy, we're not going to get a loan. I said, we're going to pay, and we're not going to pay this. And she was like, but y'all could do it. Like, no, we can't. No, we can't. And it's not a good choice financially. And just teaching her that. It's not a good choice financially based off of the degree plan that you want to do. You can get the same degree cheaper at a better at this university or this university that's offered you even more scholarship money. Yeah. When I think about her graduating class, a lot of the kids were going to schools that were a little bit they were just more economical, and most kids are going to wherever they're giving the money. You rarely meet a parent who says, oh yeah, my kid's going here, and we're not paying. They didn't get a scholarship. They didn't get anything because school is so expensive. And I remember we toured this specific school that was so expensive. And because Kennedy was like, they just need to meet me. They need to meet me. I feel like once they interview me, they're going to love me, and they're just going to throw some dollars my way. They threw some dollars her way, but not enough.
Not enough.
But I love that we told her from jump. She did that interview, I want to say like in August or September, and they gave their announcements. I think they told her she got accepted, April? And then they told her like the week of graduation how much how much money they were going to give her in scholarship, right? And so, but I love the fact that we told her from jump, if they do not give you at least half in scholarship, and you have the right that you can go apply, you will not be able to go. And so when it didn't come through, she was like, well, I guess I'm going here. And we're like, all right, praise the Lord, let's go. But I think you have to have honest conversations, because I remember when I was telling a couple of my friends, like, hey, this is where they were like, oh, you need to send her there. And I'm like, I can, but financially it's just not a really good decision. Yeah. And letting them know, like, hey, anything, if you did go here, like let's say they had given her money to go there. We told her, she was like, oh, when I live off campus, I was like, oh, you won't live off campus. You'll be an RA. And she's like, oh, when I bring my car, I'm like, you won't bring your car. I said, do you see how much gas is here in the good California? And so just letting them know and setting realistic expectations, because I mean, yes, I love my girls to death and my kids to death, and we'll do a couple of things to help them get where they want to be, or this, that. But we're also like emphasizing, like, they just came off spring break, and yeah, one went here, one went there, and we're like, hey, you got to pay half. If you want to go on spring break, you want to go to Cancun, you want to go this, you got to pay half. And so they worked and they paid half. But I think just setting those type of realistic expectations.
I think that's a great idea too, because I think at that age, you're not there. People that kids that age aren't understanding what it means to pay for things. They don't understand what it means to pay for utilities, gas, a car payment, insurance, tolls, all that. They don't have the concept of coming out of school with $100,000 of debt because they went to a great school. They don't understand when you have to pay an apartment, buy your own toilet paper, toothpaste, all of those things that get involved. And then on top of that, add that school debt loan on there.
Hey y'all, listen, Fearless Mom and Sisterhood, that's a wrap. We had such great sessions and great time with the ladies. I am so excited and thankful for just the investment that Tori Dixon and Elizabeth Woodson put into our women for this season at Concord.
One of my biggest callings, of course, has been a mom, and I want to make sure that I do things the right way for my children, leaving a legacy for them. So just this series has been empowering for me to make sure that I am intentional about the upbringing for my kids.
As a mom with a teenage boy, I have learned so much, and I've incorporated that at my house. For example, just allowing myself to drive my feelings and not my feelings to drive me. That's something that Tori talked about.
Fearless Moms has just been an amazing place where we've been able to pour into our mothers. And so listen, if you are a mom and you may have missed this round of Fearless Moms, I want you to keep your ear open. This is for you.
We had a room full of women for 6 weeks studying the Word of God. Nothing better than that. We talked about the book of Galatians. Big takeaway, you want to experience freedom in Christ? Walk by the Spirit, be obedient to the life God calls us to live, and the freedom and fullness we desire will come if we do that.
My group, yes, you see the sign up here, Living on Purpose. We have been together for 5+ years. We're no longer just friends, but we are truly sisters.
The biggest takeaway from the sisterhood has been the concept of needing to take inventory of your life in order to achieve the message that Galatians is trying to teach us, which is to live a free life.
Lady Carter is a phenomenal leader, and it really just shows her devotion, and I love the way that she shows up and is always, authentic and transparent every Saturday with us.
Now here comes your task. I need you to apply what you have learned in those classes. And then don't be a hoarder. Share that information with the sister next to you on your job, whoever you do life with, and we will see you in the fall.
So a big question that comes up a lot, especially around the church, is how do we approach financial stewardship? How can we make sure that we are being good stewards of what God is entrusting us with?
Stewardship means managing somebody else's assets. And what God gives us is, a blessing from him. And we need to be responsible with our money. We are stewards of the money that God gives us. And if God sees that we can't manage the money that he currently blesses us with, he's not going to say, oh, she's ready for more prosperity. And, I'm a strong believer that God blesses you so that you can bless others. Generosity is a huge part of financial stewardship as well. So, I am a strong believer that once you get your finances set, you need to do well for your community, do your tithing, be a steward of God's money, and be responsible with it.
Absolutely.
That's good.
That is good.
Absolutely. That's perfect. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes I just remember in seasons of whether we were because your finances go through highs and they go through lows. And when you're saving, or when you're saving, like this past weekend, I was looking for some spring decor just to kind of spruce up the house or whatever. And I remember I kept feeling like, man, I really would love our formal dining furniture is so outdated. I really would love to. And then the person I live with is a strong person about our finances. And he was kind of like, that's not the right time. Maybe after college, after Carson goes to college. I was like, wait a minute.
That's years away.
I know, right? So, but anyway, all that to say, it does kind of keep you focused on what God had, what God has, and being really responsible. Like, there's nothing wrong with the furniture. It's nothing wrong. Yeah. It's not like we sit on it. It's just you walk by it like, Ooh, it's kind of old. But it's all right.
Yeah, we always want new things. I mean, who doesn't want to redecorate their home all the time? But it's very expensive.
I know, girl.
It's very expensive. But in terms of talking about credit card debt, you know, I said we go through stages, and one big expense, and for young people especially, is preparing for a wedding. Like my little sister, she's 23 right now, and she's planning her wedding.
Praise
and
the
I was
Lord,
like,
she found somebody.
Yeah,
We
she
might
found
have to have her on the
somebody.
show because I'm trying to
Listen,
I have
understand this.
questions. I have questions. Please proceed.
But you know, I got married 6 years ago, and I really didn't have the money to do the wedding the way I wanted to, but I wanted a beautiful wedding, and I put my entire wedding on credit cards.
What?
My
Yameci?
entire wedding. My wedding was in Miami. It was amazing. And I was like, oh, I can pay this off. You know, they had the low interest, 0 interest until this. I was like, I had a plan. Everything happened. Well, after I got married, I had a load of debt on credit cards. Like in between, across many credit cards. At that time, I'm not even exaggerating, I probably had like 20 credit cards. Dang. And when I came back from my honeymoon, my husband and I decided to relocate from New York to Dallas. Well, when we moved, we didn't have a job. We didn't have a place to live. We lived in an Airbnb for 3 months. And then I had all this credit card debt that the APR specials were expiring. So how am I going to pay this now? Well, now I got myself in a pickle because now I didn't have a job. I couldn't pay it. And so it took me 6 years to pay off that wedding.
Oh my goodness.
6 years. And I just paid my last payment this last December. But I was only able
praise
to
be.
do that because God helped me. God walked me through that. He helped me. I mean, when I moved here, I didn't have a job, but he provided a job for me. He provided a place for us to live. And he really had his hand over us completely. I mean, when they say things are meant to be, you know, if it's in God's plan, he will guide you through that. You just need to trust him. But you know, when you have such crippling debt that you can't sleep at night because you have so much and you're like, how am I going to pay this off? You just have to trust in the Lord. And you just have to continue to pray. And it can be done. I mean, I paid off that wedding. I mean, to my little sister, I have different recommendations.
Right. I was going to say, what would you recommend for somebody who is about to make a big purchase like that?
Listen,
whether it's a home, whether it's a wedding, a car, you know, just major purchases. What would you say?
I think you need to be realistic about how much money you have, what budget you have, and you need to save. My dad always says, if you don't have the cash to buy it, you can't afford it. That's good. You know, and at the end of the day, I wanted a gorgeous wedding. I could have definitely done it smaller. I didn't need to do it in Miami. I didn't need to go to Greece for my honeymoon, you know.
Oh my.
But it cost me 6 years, and you can imagine how much interest accrued. Ooh. My credit score dipped completely. I went from like a 730 to a 400.
What?
A 400. For the last 6 years, my credit score's been trash. But, I mean, as soon as I paid that off, my credit score jumped back to us in the upper 700s. So it can be done. You just have to be diligent. You just have to pay that. And honestly, I had to do a debt relief program because they were able to consolidate it for me. There was no way I would have been able to pay 7 different credit cards. So you have to be realistic about where you are. The other thing is, you know, at the end of the day, I spent the money. I was responsible for paying it. And so I didn't want to do bankruptcy, which would have easily cleared that away. I felt like that was just not the way I wanted to go. And I said, you know, I had this beautiful wedding. I paid for it. But, you know, for people who are planning a wedding, have a thought in your head about a budget and multiply that 4 times because that's what flowers are going to cost you. That's what a photographer is going to cost you. And just be realistic about what you can afford. Don't get yourself into that kind of debt. I mean, you can do an absolutely gorgeous wedding, very small. Just don't dig yourself into a hole because you're really just starting off your marriage with that kind of heaviness, and that's going to really affect your marriage. That's going to affect what you can do in life. In terms of buying a home, definitely get your coins together because right now it's very expensive. We know the interest rates are very high. They're just passing a law in a couple of weeks that now buyers are going to be responsible for the buyer's agent commission, where that used to be a seller's responsibility. So where you had to come up with your down payment, the closing costs, now you're going to have to come up with you know, a 3 to 6% of your buyer's agent as well. So that's additional money that you probably didn't count for. It's an investment, but it's worth it, because think about how much apartment prices are increasing now, and you're practically paying a mortgage to live in an apartment. So do what you can to get your money together. If you need to do a little extra job, a little side hustle, I know a lot of people are doing that now to bring in a little extra money. But definitely stick to a budget. Don't overwhelm yourself with what is unrealistic.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. I think, with a car, if your car if it's still driving, drive it. There's just different options. There's lease options. There's just so many different ways that you can make your money work for you.
Yeah. Don't get into a $700 to $1,200 a month car payment.
Ooh,
No, ma'am.
That's what people are saying are car payments now. I can't even imagine.
Oh my gosh.
$1,200.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot
And
of
that's
money.
just for your car payment. That's not even including gas. That's not including tolls. That's not including insurance. Let me tell you, insurance is going up every 6 months.
Yeah.
Trust, I
Brace
have
yourselves.
Listen, I have 3 drivers, so yes, it is.
She said, I know all about insurance rates right now.
And you know what? It doesn't hurt for you to shop around for your insurance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We shop around. We've had the Lizard, we've had Allstate, we've had it all. But whoever is giving us the best rate.
Do your due diligence. Even with homeowners insurance.
Yes.
Texas is the second highest state of homeowners insurance.
Wow.
So do your due diligence and go around and see who's offering the best rates.
And I would say this, you have to save. I think, just like I was out this week kind of getting some pillows to kind of spruce up my couch or whatever. And you have to, the one thing that I always think about is my savings. If something happened right now, would I have some savings to pay that off? Or would I have to go get a credit card? If my refrigerator goes out, do I have to get a credit card to pay that refrigerator off? So your savings is everything, and you have to start now. And I think sometimes people, whether you're single or you're in your 20s or you're younger, you're thinking like, you know what? I have all the time in the world to save. And, I'm going to start saving when I turn 35, when I turn 40. But you've wasted so much time.
Yeah.
So kind of look at different options on what to put in and how much money you're putting away, because retirement is coming.
So let me ask you a question. When you were 25, were you thinking about retirement? Like, do you think your daughters are thinking about retirement money? Because I know when I was 25, I definitely wasn't thinking about retirement money.
But you know what? The one thing we did do, which I wish somebody would have done for me, we had Caitlin graduates in May. So we had her talk. She's a political science major. She wants to go to law school. So we had her talk to a couple of people who in the law that she wants to go into. And they each gave her really good advice. They said, law school is a huge commitment.
Yeah.
Before you go off to law school, see if you can do some type of fellowship or internships. So then you can make sure this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
But then also the company you work for most likely will pay for your law school. So just different things like that. Having, I would tell anybody who has a niece, nephew, daughter, brother, whatever, to have them talk to somebody into what the career field they're going into. Because it's like kind of like what you said. A lot of people graduate with degrees and they're not even doing that. So y'all pray for me. My son wants to be a marine biologist. My husband is losing his mind over this because he's like, what's he going to do? Just be in the ocean all day? I mean, how's he going to make a living? We're going to have to support him for the rest of his life. So he's been like, hey, son, why don't you look into engineering and explore this?
You can't go wrong with engineering.
And he was like, and so my son, I have to give it to him. He's very compliant. He's like, okay, Dad, yes, I will look into this. But all that to say, just looking into what your career choice is, because are you going to be able to afford the lifestyle that you're trying to live? Are you going to be able to have the rent that you're trying to get? And so on. Like there's some internships she has where it's going to be in New York, and we were kind of like, hey man, that's really expensive. So what's your pay going to be? You do know that you are going to be living probably somewhere with some bugs because it's so high in New York. But anyway,
tell her to go to Jersey. It's funny, when I was young, people used to ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I always knew I wanted to be in finance, but I always wanted to be a cashier. So now I'm just a bona fide cashier. And then when self-checkout came, I was ecstatic because I was like, oh, I'm finally a cashier. But I always knew I wanted to, and my dad used to buy me these big cash registers as toys, but I always knew that I wanted to be in finance. So I was fortunate enough that what I did study, I ended up doing.
That's cool.
That's great. No, I'm really thinking about just the conversation with planning for retirement. And I had a professor in my freshman year of college that just told us you can never start too early and you need to prepare. And that was so helpful because I think now there's a lot of people my age and even older that are like, oh man, like I wish I had started sooner. And a lot of people are just kind of wondering like now how much is enough for retirement. People are working longer, working into older ages, and people are, the amount that you thought might be, okay, this is a good cushion for me to have, it's not going to cut it anymore. So all of this is helpful. I'm taking it all in. I might have to come find you at the church.
Absolutely, I'm available.
We need all of these gems.
Well, again, thank y'all so much. We will check you next time on Her Story. Y'all take care.